Lululemon earnings are crossing the wire. The share's down a quick 13% here. That looks to be has to do with the company's revenue forecast for the second quarter. So I'll tell you that first. Net revenue for the second quarter seen by the company at $2.54 to $2.56 billion. Analysts on average had estimated $2.57 billion. It also looks like that the company's forecast for the full year for net revenue leaves it room to miss estimates. For the first quarter, earnings per share met estimates, $2.60. And in the first quarter, net revenue at $2.37 billion. Comparable sales, which we always look at for this company as well, they were up 1% in the first quarter. America's comparable sales down 2%. International up by 6%. So seeing a little bit of weakness here in the U.S. and the Americas, which is their biggest market.
And this stock, Julie, it was already down about 12% year to date heading to this print, and now you're down another quick 12 or 13% here, at least initially in the after hours. I do see the CEO, that would be Calvin McDonald, trying to sound an optimistic tone here. McDonald talking about in the first quarter achieving growth across channels and categories and markets, including the U.S. he calls out. He talks about guests responding well to product innovations and newness and brand activations. Does characterize the macro as dynamic, is how he puts it.
I also want to call out, as I look down here, to the increase in net revenue, or I should say the comparable sales, let's go there, for China, which has also been a big market for them. So it looks like the China change was 7%, a 7% increase. If you take out the effect of foreign exchange, you get an 8% gain. So still seeing that sort of relative strength in China relative to the rest of the world. On a net revenue basis, China's revenues were up 21% or 22% in constant currency. So that's something I know that investors have been watching. Let's get more reaction now to Lululemon earnings. For that, we bring in David Swartz, senior equity analyst at Morningstar. David, it's good to see you. What is going on with Lululemon, particularly in the Americas? Is this a competition issue? Is this a merchandise mix issue? Why do you think we are not seeing better performance in their comps in the Americas?
I think it's both of those things. We have seen over the last few quarters that competition has had some impact on Lululemon, which is unusual because Lululemon historically has always been able to overcome competition. It's really nothing new in this industry. Lululemon has always faced imitators and contenders, but we have seen some companies like Alo Yoga and Vuori, to name two, that have done very well in the upscale women's athleisure space, and that has affected Lululemon to some degree. We also have seen a situation in which Lululemon has kind of struggled to get the right products into its stores. The company had a change last year in its design team. Their lead designer, Sun Cho, left to become president of Vans, and that did affect Lululemon, I think, for some time, and there has been a reorganization of that part of the business. I still think that Lululemon is very strong in product development, but we haven't seen it quite as much recently. And then also, it's just a natural slowing down of Lululemon's business in North America. The company already has stores in all major metropolitan regions in the US and Canada, and so it was almost certainty that it would not be able to post the same kind of growth rates that it had in the past. And so that's why it's looking for places like China and Europe for a lot of future growth.
David, what is this company's tariff exposure, and how are they navigating that dynamic?
Yeah, so like just about everybody else in this industry, Lululemon uses a primarily Asia-based production, primarily third-party factories. I don't think Lululemon has a lot of direct exposure from China because, like others in this industry, including Nike, a lot of the production in China has shifted to other countries in recent years. And also a lot of the production in China is actually designed for Chinese consumers. And Lululemon has been opening a lot of stores in China. But Lululemon certainly has exposure to countries like Vietnam and other countries in Southeast Asia, which have emerged as major sportswear producers in recent years. And it does have high exposure to the U.S. So it certainly does have exposure to tariffs, but Lululemon does have pricing power. Its products are generally more expensive than others. And so I think it can actually raise prices to offset tariffs better than most of their competitors.
And what about its business in China? I mentioned before that we saw comps there rise at a faster pace, but that's been the case there than in the Americas. Is that business meeting your expectations, and is that momentum going to continue, do you think?
I think maybe it has slowed down a little bit because there were times when we were seeing growth rates over 30% in China. Lululemon is opening a lot of stores there. It's still a relatively small business. If you look at competitors like Adidas and Nike, they have thousands of stores in China. So Lululemon could conceivably open many more. It's a market, though, right now that is troubled. We've seen some pretty weak results from sportswear companies in China recently and apparel companies overall, because China's economy has not been very strong, and that's especially true with high youth unemployment in China, and that's affecting companies like Lululemon. And so, we may see a bit of a slowdown there, but it's still a very high potential market for Lululemon. Its market share right now is still very low, and awareness is low, and it certainly could be much higher in future years.
David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you have the equivalent of a hold on this name. So what would you need to see, David, before you were telling clients to get more bullish?
Yeah, so before today's report, my fair value estimate was $315. So I thought it was maybe a little bit overvalued. Now with the stock down in the aftermarket today, maybe it's a little bit undervalued. I would like to see the company get its growth rate in the Americas back up a little bit. We're never going to see the same kind of double-digit numbers that we saw in the past, most likely. But if it could get back into like the single, mid-single-digit range, that would certainly impress investors, and I think that could potentially get the price a little bit higher. But Lululemon stock price tends to be very volatile. At times, it often gets to be quite expensive. Certainly, when it was over $500 a share, I was maybe one of the few people who thought it was really expensive and overpriced. But there are buying opportunities. If it continues to go down, this could be a buying opportunity in Lululemon, I think, because this is still a very strong company with incredible earnings power and cash flow and no debt. So there's a lot of things to like with this company.
David, always great to see you. Appreciate that instant analysis. Thank you.
Thanks.